Hello, everyone. Hope you had a nice weekend. So, today we're going to be talking about different perspectives on the Vietnam War in the 1960s by looking at different primary sources in groups. So, before we get to that, I'd like you to do a do now activity. So, individually, please brainstorm when you believe war is justified. Under what circumstances do you think it is okay for a country to get involved in war? So, is it only okay when we have been attacked? Is it okay to do it for economic reasons? Is it okay to go to war to increase your territory? When morally do you think it is okay to go to war and why? Excellent. Awesome. Wonderful job with that, guys. So, today we're going to get into different perspectives on the Vietnam War. So, as we have been talking about throughout our past few classes, the Vietnam War is an extremely divisive issue in American society. So, you have some Americans who believe that the war is justified and correct. So, this argument is that, communism is this huge threat and it's going to take over the world country by country, and we have to stop it whenever it rises up. So, in this viewpoint, we have to make sure Vietnam does not become a communist country to prevent communism from spreading all over the world. If we let Vietnam become communist, that means that countries nearby might also turn to communism, and we don't want that. So we have to get in right away. The other perspective is an anti-war perspective, and this perspective says, hey, this country has nothing to do with us. Why are we sending, all of our, young people to go die in a war that really has nothing to do with the safety or well-being of America? And also, we're killing millions of Vietnamese civilians for no good reason. Why can't we just let this country decide its own fate? Why do we have to tell them what kind of government to have? So we have these sort of different perspectives on the war kind of existing. Excellent. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at three different primary sources in groups. So I'll split you up into groups of three, and each of you will receive one of three sources. So I'm going to give each of you a big piece of paper with markers, and what I'd like you to do is have a silent discussion. So this means that you're going to read the source, and then on your big piece of paper, you're going to write down any questions you have, any comments you have, and you're going to respond to each other. So someone could say, like, what does this person mean when he says this? Or I think this about this. And then after that, another person can connect it and say, oh, I think this is the answer to this question. Or I disagree with you on this. And you're all going to write on this big piece of paper, have like kind of a conversation where all of your ideas are connecting, right? And you're not going to say anything. Excellent. So I just want to give each of you an intro to these three sources that you're going to look at. So the first one is an interview with President Dwight Eisenhower, who was president in the 1950s, just as the United States is starting to get a little bit involved in the Vietnam War. So his argument is in favor of more intervention. So I want you to pay attention to, how does Cold War ideology play a role in what Eisenhower is saying? How is he kind of talking about the threat of communism, and how does he use like this idea of the threat of communism as a justification for war? How does he classify the government of Vietnam? He's going to use the word dictatorship a lot. He's going to emphasize like the lack of democracy. Why does he do this? How does this help him justify war? Is he right to classify the Vietnamese this way? He's also going to give a lot of economic reasons, talking about natural resources that companies need that are threatened by, the communist takeover of Vietnam. So think about like, is it okay to go to war over economic resources? Is that, a justifiable reason for people to lose their lives? So kind of think about what Eisenhower's saying. What are his arguments? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you sympathetic, unsympathetic? Excellent. And the second primary source we're going to look at is by Ho Chi Minh, who was the leader of the Vietnamese Communist Party, who was, sort of the main antagonist to the United States. And so he's going to write a piece called The Declaration of the Independence of Vietnam. So Vietnam, as we've talked about, has a long history of colonialism. So the French essentially owned Vietnam for like 50 years. And then after that, during World War II, the Japanese, took control of Vietnam. So, there's been a long movement of Vietnamese people trying to be like, we want to control our own country. We want independence. So in this document, he's going to reference the American Revolution a lot, the Declaration of Independence, and he's going to say like, we are like the Americans declaring our independence. So I want you to think about like his arguments. Is he correct? Do you think Vietnam should be able to decide its own destiny? Do you think it's hypocritical of the United States to get involved? Because he uses all of these kind of American ideals like independence, democracy, freedom. Excellent. The last document that you guys are going to look at is by Muhammad Ali, who was a famous heavyweight boxer who refused to be drafted into the Vietnam War. And the reasons he gives are really interesting because they have a lot to do with racism in the United States. He's going to say a lot about like, I'm treated as a second-class citizen here in the United States, and you want me to go to another country so that I can dominate another person of color? I have more in common with the Vietnamese than I do with the Americans. We're both, under a common oppression. He's going to make that kind of argument. So I want you to think about like, how does American racism play into his arguments? How does the history of colonialism play into his arguments as well? Excellent, cool. So you're now going to engage in your silent discussion for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back as a group. So write down what you think on your big piece of paper. Excellent. So very good job with that. Next, what we're going to do is you're going to check out the silent discussions of other groups. So you'll hang up your big pieces of paper on the wall, and you'll go around with your group, and you'll comment on what they had to say about their documents. So again, ask questions, provide commentary. You can disagree with each other as long as you're respectful. Yeah, excellent. So for 10 minutes with your group, stand up and walk around and check out other people's silent discussions. Cool. Well, now that we are finished with that portion, we are going to just do a wider classroom discussion about this activity. So what did you learn? Did this kind of change your opinion about war, when it should be fought, about America's role in the world? So sort of what are you thinking in terms of war? Which sides do you agree on? Do you sympathize with the Vietnamese perspective and the desire for independence? Do you sympathize with Eisenhower in the belief that we have to stop communism at all costs? Do you sympathize with Ali and think that, this kind of has to do with race? In Vietnam War is an example of, white oppression that's kind of similar to the oppression of black people in America. So how does race have to do with this? How does colonialism have to do with it? Let me know your thoughts. Okay. Excellent. Very good job, everyone. These silent discussions look really great. As you leave, please fill out an exit ticket where you write down 3 things that you were surprised by in reading these documents. All right. I hope you have a great day. You guys did really wonderfully. Thank you so much.